Hello sewing people of the internet. This is going to be a sewing video with no sewing, and at the end of the video there will not be a finished sewn product to show you, but if you like to do the kinds of things that I like to do on this channel, then you might find this helpful or interesting. A very close friend of mine has asked me to make a duffel bag for him for travel. I've made a couple of duffel bags in the past. This one's going to be a little bit more complicated and much bigger. And I wanted to make sure that I made it an appropriate size, big enough to carry all the things that he wants to carry in it when he's traveling, but not too big so that it's not full and all the stuff is shifting around. So we've done some planning and measuring of some of the things and some fake packing and stuff, and we came up with a size. Before I started cutting expensive fabric and realizing that we didn't have the size quite right, I decided to make a paper model of the bag. And that way I can actually show him how big it is, and we can decide together if it's too big, not big enough, or just right. I don't have the first model I made with me because it's huge. It turned out to be about a 120 liter bag. It's about 7,300, I think, cubic inches. And you can buy travel duffel bags that size in even larger capacity. But looking at the paper model, it seemed a bit big. So I've sent it to him to take home and to try to pack it and see how it looks to him. And in the meantime, I'm going to make another paper model. It's a little bit smaller, so I thought I'd share that with you. So just made a rough sketch to keep myself oriented on the dimensions. But these are the revised dimensions of the slightly reduced size. And basically it's going to be 9 inches tall, 15 inches deep, and 38 inches wide. The total width is 38 inches. There's two 6-inch wide shoe compartments, one on each end. So now I'm going to make a paper version of this. This bag works out to be about 84 liters, or a little over 5,000 cubic inches. I'm using a roll of craft paper. A friend of mine actually gave this to me, but you might be able to find it at your local office supply store. And I'll put an Amazon link in the description where you can buy something like this. Much as when I'm working with fabric, the first thing I needed to do is to start with a square edge. So I just use a regular framing square. And I use that straight line as my initial reference point for all the other marks I made. The first pieces I cut out were the end panels. For the purposes of this paper model, I'm using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And I marked that seam allowance with a 1/2 inch wide piece of aluminum that I keep for that purpose. The dimensions that I'm working towards on my drawing are the finished dimensions from seam to seam and don't include the seam allowance. And I'll probably use a different seam allowance for when I make this bag out of fabric, but it makes it easier for math and for stapling to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance on the paper. Prior to joining the pieces, I folded all of the seam allowances, and that just makes it easier to staple them together. I cut open the slits where the zippers are going to be on the finished bag just to accurately represent the width of the openings. Cutting those slits also made it easier for me to staple the pieces together from the inside. Taping on a fake handle probably wouldn't be necessary, and I don't need it for my own reference, but I wanted my friend to know as closely as possible what the bag's going to look like when it's finished. So I've finished the second iteration of the paper duffel bag, and I have the first one back now just so you can see how truly enormous it is. And I say truly, I mean, you can buy bags like this, but I've never made one this big, so it feels exceptionally big. My friend took this one home, packed all his stuff in it, and determined that it is in fact bigger than he needs, and also doesn't fit in his car where he intends to carry the bag on an upcoming trip. So it's a good thing that we tested this. The new one does fit. As it turns out, this new one is based on a height that I described by drawing a line on the old one, and it needs to be about 2 inches higher. All the other dimensions are good. So this is the model that the finished bag will be modeled after. Some things that you might consider doing if you decide to use this method before making a bag or other project. Once I had the bag stapled together, then I could make other decisions like where do we want to mount D-rings for mounting a carry strap? How many pockets do we want and where do we want them? And not only does that help me as the person building the project, but since the person I'm building it for is actually here, a lot of times I make stuff for people who aren't geographically located where I am. In this case, my friend lives here. I was able to show him, like, this is what it's going to look like. This is how big it is. He could try putting his stuff in it. So this is a really valuable way to mock something up without spending a lot of money on fabric and wasting it, or spending the time sewing something together that maybe you're going to have to take apart and reconfigure. I've mentioned in previous videos I have a bad habit of using the ridiculous amount of fabric I have on hand and just making stuff without going to the trouble of making a mock-up like this. However, the fabric that I'm using for this I actually purchased for the project, so I really don't have any to waste. So that was another thing that drove me to do this project. This also might be a good idea for you if you need to order fabric and you're not sure how much you're going to need. You can make this mock-up, and then once you're sure you've got what you want, take it all apart and measure how much fabric you need from it. So that's just a little insight into a way you can figure out how a project is going to go together. A couple things about this bag. There's going to be a panel to separate the shoe compartments on each end from the main compartment. I didn't mock that up in paper because it didn't really matter. I also didn't make mock-ups of the pockets for the sides, although I could definitely do that. If you're wondering, yes, I intend to make a video on the construction of the duffel bag based on this paper model. I'm not sure how long it'll be, but if you'd like to see it, make sure you've clicked the subscribe button and click the notification bell so you know when I upload new videos. If you like what I'm doing, clicking like always helps. If you want to support the channel, you can buy cool t-shirts like, okay, you go to Alexander Dyer's channel and buy one of his t-shirts, but I have t-shirts and coffee mugs and stickers if you want to buy something to help support what I'm doing here. Thanks for watching. See you next time.